everybody. I'm Lisa Brennan.
And I'm Justin Trice.
Welcome to Crime of the Arts, a true crime podcast that peeks behind the curtain to shine a light on the dark and untold truths of the creative arts.
From film set mysteries to celebrity murders and art heists, these two theater nerds will usher you into the unknown.
This week, my story is about the Altamont Speedway Music Festival.
Oh, I'm not sure what that music festival is about, but I'm sure it's going to be kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you did that Twilight Zone tune because, yeah, I'm actually doing a story in regards to Twilight Zone, the movie.
Oh my God.
Not to be confused with the prolific show that I love, but we'll get into that later. But yes, I'm going to cover something on that.
I don't know that I've ever seen the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, it's a classic.
Okay.
Where just, it was good stories, but then it's infamous for other things. Which,
of course, there's always dirt.
There's always something. There's always a little dirt there. That's crazy. All right,
you are first.
Oh man, damn. So you've never seen it at all, but
no.
You watched Twilight Zone. Yes.
I remember being a child and watching this one episode where aliens came and they were like little alien people and it was black and white and
yes,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, the whole time we thought it was like a woman living by herself, and then these alien invaders came and they were microscopic. We thought they were the aliens, but come to find out
she's the fucking alien.
Yeah,
right,
she's the alien. See, that's good shit right there.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I'm a weirdo. I'm not a weirdo, but I mean, I like
Justin's a weirdo. We all know. We all know.
He's a weirdo.
It's okay.
I'm a weirdo. Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody knows. Yes, I love Twilight Zone. In terms of whenever people ask me about my favorite shows of all time, I always preface The Wire and Breaking Bad to me are tied.
Top notch. Okay.
But up there, and I always fucking defend it and argue it, is Twilight Zone, because how crazy is that? That show is so ahead of its time, and networks and everything. But Rod Serling and a team of two other prolific authors at the time whose stuff keeps getting used in movies now, they just hunched together, wrote all these episodes. It's like an anthology series, different episodes, different genres. It covered a little bit of everything, but as time goes by, half those episodes are becoming like a fucking reality.
Dude, and that's the thing that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But that we live in the Twilight Zone, isn't that the whole concept? The show, when you say it was ahead of its time, it was really ahead of its time. The whole everything that they tried to do with makeup and special effects and all of these things they were testing the waters and all of that. It didn't really exist the way that it did after. They kind of paved the way.
They paved the way for that. And I mean, back in the day, it was very mixed review. And over time, it just people started appreciating it more. So, I mean, I can name tons of episodes that I'm into.
The one with the doll.
Talking Tina. I'm Talking Tina.
Yes,
I don't like you.
No, and
Tina,
no.
And I'm going to kill you.
See, okay. So I only remember the Twilight Zone episodes that scared the fuck out of me as a kid, apparently.
Yeah, let me tell you something, man. There's so many of them that kind of freaked me out as a kid, but I enjoyed them. And then there's so many more now. Holy shit! When the pandemic first started, Monsters in Maple Street. You look that shit up. It's about a seemingly happy neighborhood, and then the power starts to go out there, and all the neighbors start acting kind of wild, and you're seeing their true sides. Things there's so many episodes. The Obsolete Man, where this guy lives in the future, and they feel he's obsolete because he doesn't contribute to they don't say social media society, but it's essentially social media society what they built upon. I really need to watch
now as an adult, not as a scared child. The social connotation that they left in every episode is probably a little too relevant and a little too ahead of its time. They foreshadowed. Okay, so the movie is one story? No,
so the movie, in true Twilight Zone fashion, it's 3 stories, or technically 4 if you count the introduction.
Do they intertwine?
They do not intertwine. They're definitely just regular Twilight Zone episodes, but in movie format. But the thing about this film, before we go into details of what's going on, it had 3 to 4 directors, 3 to 4 writers. Steven Spielberg did one. John Landis did one. It had all sorts of heavy hitters. It had Dan Aykroyd, you know, it had John Lithgow. It had a few other more prominent older actors that now out of their prime doing whatever.
Right.
Some really cool shit. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. You might be able to find it on Netflix or something.
When did they make it?
80s. This was it released, I want to tell you 84. I'm just gonna double check because it was supposed to come out earlier, but due to things happening, 83, excuse me. Came
Okay.
out in 83. So yeah, we're just gonna get into the nitty-gritty about that. So
hold on, I got a question.
Mhm,
Sorry.
mhm.
Is the Crypt Keeper the Twilight Zone?
No, that's Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, okay. I need to like separate the images in my brain. So go ahead.
But John Landis, I'm gonna pull up a few more of his credits because my story revolves more around this gentleman. You know, he was a well-known actor, producer, and director. Back in his day, he produced Blues Brothers. You know, he did quite a bit of things. There's something else. I'm just trying to see. I'm playing that game of what would Lisa know John Landis from? That's why it's a
Hold
it's
on,
a
I'll
fun
go look
game.
him up.
Yeah.
I'll go look him up.
But he's directed a lot of stuff. Even during the 2000s, he's directed
John
stuff.
Landis.
Have you ever seen American Werewolf in London? He directed that. He did National Lampoon's Animal House.
He's got Three Amigos.
Yeah. So you know who he is.
Animal House. Yeah.
He's done a lot of comedy, and he was like one of the forefathers for special effects because American Werewolf in London. You know, normally I try to be coy with what I'm doing with the story. It's just this story I actually have to be more forthcoming with now because later when we get into the story, we're gonna see some stuff that comes from it. Unfortunately, on this film, while filming, an accident did occur. And I say accident. You can all decide what you want with it. What ultimately happened is John Landis, his story, which featured Vic Morrow. We're too young to really know who Vic Morrow is, but anyone like our favorite fan, like your aunt, if she hears that name, Vic Morrow, she'll be familiar with him. He was a well-known character actor. He used to be on a show called Combat. It was like a World War I drama, but he's been in tons of other things. He's like near, you know, the later years of his career, and he was in this particular Twilight Zone story. Ultimately, an accident happened which dealt with special effects, and 3 people were killed, including Victor Morrow, and 2 kids.
Oh my god!
And I'm gonna get into Normally, I know I try to bury the lead.
This movie still?
Oh, we're gonna get into all of that. So my story.
Okay, you can't bury the lead on this one.
Yeah, exactly. I can't bury the lead on this because it's not the story itself. The death is there, the tragedy is there, but like me explaining why it went down, that's the real story. So I'm not gonna try to hide it. The accident happened on July 23rd, 1982, when the crew was shooting a scene at Indian Dunes Park, which is like a 600-acre ranch that was built along the Santa Clara River in Valencia, California. So the movie was split into a prologue and 4 different segments, and they had already shot the prologue before the crew decided to shoot the final scene from the first segment at Indian Dunes. In the segment, Vic Morrow's character, Bill Connor, was sent back in time and became a Vietnamese man trying to protect 2 kids from the invading American army troops. Director John Landis cast a 7-year-old boy named, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Micah Dinlay, and a 6-year-old girl named Renee Shin Yi as the children Morrow's character was protecting.
Okay, so they were Vietnamese children.
Correct.
And who is the actor? This is Morrow. Is he a white guy?
Victor Morrow. Yep, he's a white guy. Both those kids, though, they were cast illegally because they didn't have the required permits to perform in the scene, which violated California child laws.
Great, perfect, wonderful. Thank you, Hollywood. Cheers.
Both of the children's families were paid under the table to break those laws, which also prohibited children from working at night. Landis decided not to provide waivers for their part in the film because he thought that he wouldn't be able to get permission for the children to shoot at night with explosives involved in the scene.
Yeah, no shit. Probably for good reason, don't you think?
Right. So the casting agents were unaware that the children were made part of the scene, and the associate producer, George Falsely Jr., even told the parents not to tell the firefighters who were on standby that their children were involved in a scene.
Don't mention to the fire and rescue team that your children are in this scene.
Because they're not supposed to be there. Because the parents,
Mm-hmm.
Lisa's face right now, I'm like, I don't even know if I should continue. Her hat might just fly off at the shit I'm about to say.
Already so fucking mad. So don't tell the people who could potentially save your children if there was something to be wrong in an emergency. Don't tell them your kids are there. So you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's all about the fines and the money.
Wrong with all these parents?
Don't
tell. Okay.
I mean, I'm not gonna. I would have put all the blame on the parents. You'll understand more when I.
Okay. Do they not speak English? Continue.
Just yeah, exactly. I was literally about to say, because the parents didn't speak English as a first language, they were mostly unaware of the laws and safety procedures they had to abide by on a professional film set. So they
fucking shitballs. God, hate it.
It's fucking crazy. And as part of the scene, Morrow, Victor Morrow, Vic Morrow, he was supposed to be carrying the two children out of a deserted village and across the river while being chased by American troops in a helicopter that was hovering right above them.
Okay, I have a question. Logistically.
Oh, yes. Good. Mm-hmm.
So are they whitewashing a character in this, essentially? Like, is he supposed to be an American troop that's rescuing Vietnamese children?
Oh, no. Let me give you a little backstory. So his character in this movie is extremely fucking racist, and he goes off the cuff in a bar. And then when he leaves the bar, what starts to happen is it seems like every time he walks somewhere, he's transported to another time. He still appears to be the white guy that we see, but now he is, when he looks in the mirror, he's other type of people. So he Jewish, black, Vietnamese. Okay, so yeah, there's no whitewashing or anything.
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah, yes, it's the opposite.
They're making more of a statement. Okay.
Yeah, it goes back to an homage of, and different actors play him, so to speak, in the other form. But it goes back to like a few Twilight Zone episodes that kind of dealt with something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no whitewashing.
Okay.
But yeah.
Whatever you're gonna say is gonna make me mad. I can see it on your face. You're like preparing.
It's not gonna make you that bad. There's degrees. Okay. You are. I mean, it's gonna increase your anger. This might increase it by like 20%. If I
Justin, I can tell now. Justin's got a few tells in his facial expressions of when he's about to lay something down that I'm gonna be like, what?
Because I like watching her, and I keep looking back. For those of you that will eventually subscribe to Patreon and you see these videos, you'll understand completely what's happening. You're gonna get it. You're gonna be like, this guy's a dick. He's enjoying seeing how she's gonna react. Sometimes I fake her out too, because sometimes she gets all and I'm like, wait a minute.
Pump the brakes. Hit me with it.
All right. So like I said, he was supposed to be running from this river away from the American troops, carrying the two kids to safety, right? The fire safety officer felt like the helicopter was hovering too close to the ground and would have been affected by the pyrotechnics, but they continued the scene regardless. Sounds familiar? Kind of like one of the tales Lisa told us about the fucking concert venue, and just so yeah, they. Are
you about to tell me these people got hit by a fucking helicopter?
I don't know what I'm gonna tell you. The helicopter. I do know what I'm gonna tell you, but yes, the helicopter is flown by a Vietnam War veteran named Dorsey Wingo, who had experience flying helicopters in the war. While flying the last part of the scene at 2:20 a.m., Morrow took his position in the Santa Clara River with both children under each arm. Like, he's in this scene, he's literally like, holding them in each arm and running with them. And Landis instructed the helicopter to fly lower as the explosives were set off.
Great.
It was hovering near this large mortar effect when he rotated the helicopter, the pilot, when he rotated the helicopter to the left for the following camera shot. The explosives were detonated while the helicopter's tail rotor was still hovering above it, which caused the helicopter to spin out of control after the rotor detached from the tail. At the same time, Vic Morrow had dropped Chin in the water, and he then entered. He tried to grab her when the helicopter fell on top of all three of them. Hold your reaction for a second. I'm gonna say something else because I feel like if I stagger it, you're gonna be like, no. Okay. But Morrow and Lay were decapitated by the helicopter's main rotor blade, which was still spinning. So again, like, you know, in the helicopters, the back of the plane, that tailpiece, that was too close to the pyrotechnics. It fucking blew it right off.
It'll like bottle around.
Pyrotechnics blew it right off. And then you now have the helicopter, which is, again, is straight. It's now going sideways. Like I said, she dropped out of the thing. The little girl dropped out of the thing. He went in there to get her in the water as the helicopter's now sideways, falling inward.
Holy fuck.
Morrow and Lay were decapitated by the helicopter's main rotor blade, which was still spinning, while Chin was crushed to death by the helicopter's right landing skid. So I'll just let you take all of that in for a moment. Like,
oh, and these kids were like under 15.
Kids were like under 10. They were like,
oh God. I hate it. Okay, so let me rip John Landis apart for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so everything is about getting an image in your head in real life, right? That's what these directors are here for. They have the creative mind and the ability to kind of pull this world in together. But you have a moral responsibility to make sure that everyone is safe in order for you to have the ability to be able to put your mind to this work.
Exactly.
So, when you fail epically at that, I mean, how did he do anything else after this?
Well, yeah.
Oh, you're gonna get there. Okay, this is right.
It's not even I'm gonna get there. We kind of already talked about this man because I had made mentions. I'm like, oh, he's done some things. But yeah, so that went down.
He's untrustworthy in 100 ways. He's breaking child labor laws. He's breaking the recommendations of the fire safety marshal who's on site for a fucking reason. It's
like, blowing my mind because by then again he was like a very successful and prolific director, and he's gone through the motions before. So I'm like, what's making you break it now? I get there's a lot of pressure. It's Twilight Zone.
Yeah, but
whatever. But that's no excuse for how you were getting down. And it makes me wonder because me personally, I've gone back and watched some of his other films, and I'm like, was this motherfucker breaking several laws and knees, and we just didn't know because nobody died? You know, it becomes one of those things.
Dude, yes, probably. I mean, yeah, yep, you're probably right. If he's gonna do it here, and it really just it's a culmination of what he's always done, then yeah. It's not a problem until someone dies. Honestly, that's the biggest thing in safety.
Yeah. After the incident, one of the assistant cameramen that was on board the helicopter stated, and mind you, like, again,
he lived.
One of the cameramen and the pilots, they lived. It's literally Vic and because again, the plane. If you ever see the movie for yourself, and this is the reason why I kind of have a hard time seeing the movie, because there is a helicopter scene per se within that movie. Still, it's not that one per se, but they're flying low to the ground. When they say low to the ground, I mean it truly was low to the water. Like it's only like a foot or two, because we're gonna get into that. But yeah, so essentially, you know, the plane didn't blow up. I mean, the pilot, the cameramen were able to get out
to water, and
if it's a tough situation because like if the three of them didn't fall out, things like that, they still might be alive, but that's not the point. It's just like this shouldn't have happened to begin with.
Yep.
Like I said, the assistant cameraman that was on board the helicopter stated that the production manager told the pilot to pull back once the explosives were detonated, but John Landis instructed them to go lower for the shot. Once the helicopter was hit, they tried to leave the area but lost control of the aircraft as it started spinning in circles before it crashed. Landis had already been warned of the dangers but disregarded them altogether, saying that the worst that could happen was they would lose the helicopter.
Oh, yeah?
Lose the helicopter.
No fucking big deal.
He didn't think there'd be any fatalities. He was just like, worst case scenario, we'll lose this helicopter.
Worst case scenario is we crash a helicopter. I mean, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Totally fine.
And although the deaths were an accident, they could have been avoided had Landis not jeopardized the safety of his actors by listening to the
Undoubtedly.
advice of his crew. Had he listened to his crew, we would have been good here. And here's where it gets just for me like a little more icky. Following the accident, the families of the victims filed a series of different lawsuits against the studio and filmmakers, including Landis and Spielberg, which rightfully so. I'm not.
Are you about to tell me that they denied all of this?
All four of the parents of the children, I'm going to tell you, all four of the parents of the children testified that they were never told that there would be a helicopter or any explosives used in the shooting of the scene, and that they were reassured by the team that their children wouldn't be put in harm's way. That's what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah, no shit. No one's going to be like, yeah, kid, go ahead. You might not make it out of here, but I want that 20 grand.
But they didn't even tell them about the helicopter. They didn't tell the parents are saying you didn't even tell us about the helicopter. You didn't tell us about helicopter or pyrotechnics. You didn't say anything to us about that.
And I'm guessing the parents weren't on set to see what was going on.
Well, that's what a little hazy there.
Yeah. I mean, I hope they weren't, because then you watched your kid die, and that's fucking worse than anything.
Yeah. So, and again, like I said, all four of the parents testified.
Yeah.
But prior, they were not warned of that.
Yeah, and if your kid's already in the scene, like, again, it's that whole that whole Hollywood concept of not making a fuss and not being a pain in the ass, or just feeling powerless, like in the middle of an entire movie set. Oh fuck. I hate this story.
I warned you, it's a little darker. You know, again, Lisa and I, we don't tell each other way ahead of time what we're doing, but as we're like getting ready to start the recording for the day, we know what we're told what we're doing, and we're trying to decide who's light, who's dark, or if we're both dark.
Trying to balance out the episodes for y'all, because we don't want to like bring it too much of one direction or the other.
Yeah, so we were just like, I told her, I was like, this will be a little dark. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You have to be the dark one sometimes.
But yeah, so that went down with the parents. Micah Dinlay's parents, who were on set at the time of the accident, had survived the Vietnam War before moving to the US and were traumatized by the explosions in the accident that caused their son's death. So again, Lisa, they did not know up until the night they brought the kids there. Of course
not, because they would not be like, sure, I'm a Vietnam War survivor. Let me put my child in a scene where they are going to reenact my worst nightmares.
Yep. It literally brought back the traumatic, horrible memories from that war.
Oh my God.
Micah's father also testified that he overheard Landis tell the helicopter pilot to fly the helicopter lower during the accident, which, as you know, I told you the cameraman was already informed. So in 1986, I told you this movie came out in 83. The accident happened in like, what did I tell you? 82, 83. Yeah, the accident happened on 82. Movie came out in 83. And then in 1986, 4 years after the accident, Landis and several other members of the production team were put on trial for manslaughter charges for the roles that they played in the accident. The trial lasted for 9 months, and it ended in 1987 when they were acquitted of the charges.
Oh, fuck.
Within a year, I knew Hollywood again.
But you know what? Hold on. Let me unpack that for a second. So that's not something that happens a lot.
Oh yeah, normally it doesn't. It doesn't.
Usually they just call it an accident, and they wipe their hands of it, and they walk away. I mean, we've talked about the whole rust thing before. And they want to do that to someone, but they just don't really know how to go about it. It's not as clear as day as this is, or
exactly.
It's like he's like blatantly not listening to
clearly. Yeah, he gave no fucks. He was just like, I'm gonna do this my way.
Right, but that's interesting. I can't think of one other scenario that's kind of been the case. Can you?
I can't, and it's funny you should say that, because like I said, this trial went 9 months, and 87 they were acquitted of the charges. Within a year, they were able to settle outside of court with Morrow's family, and the families of the children received $2 million from the studio itself.
Okay, what's $2 million in what? 80? What year?
This was 87 by the time they settled out of court.
Okay.
So $2 million is still kind of high. What is that the equivalent of now? Maybe 5, 6
million in 1987. Purchasing power about 5.2.
Yeah,
so
CA. I was like,
double and a half.
that's right. So they had a nice sum.
Yeah.
Although
$5 million. I
although
mean, not that
John
life is
Landis,
worth
yeah,
anything.
life is not. I mean,
right.
priceless,
There's no
but
number you can put on it. 2 million, whatever, each family.
it
So
the way
Vic Morrow's family and then each of the children's families.
each of the children's families, yes, 2 million.
Okay.
So although John Landis himself was never charged with the crime, Landis was also heavily criticized for breaking the child labor laws in California when he hired the two children to shoot that scene. No surprise there. However, after the trial, Warner Brothers set up a new safety committee to help establish acceptable safety standards for future movies. Eventually, they published those standards into what is known as the Injury and Illness Prevention Program, or IP for short, IIPP. It's a safety manual for television and feature productions, which are regularly posted as safety bulletins at studios, and the IIPP manual is now distributed to all studio employees to ensure that they follow proper safety protocols. The Screen Actors Guild also established a 24-hour hotline for any participating members of the studio to make reports on any safety violations that occur on set and use their right to refuse to participate in a scene if they felt it was unsafe.
It's crazy to think that we have been making movies since the 30s, and it took 1987 for them to come up with a unionized,
due to a cataclysmic,
to make a system where people can protect themselves and to have a guideline. Like, I work in safety right now. I know that I talk about working in like the industry of death, but I work in now the safety of the people who do the things that the dead people need you to do. And it's OSHA and all these other things are huge. To think that they didn't already have something designed and in place specific for this is nuts that it took 50 years. Nuts.
It's mind-blowing, but that seems to be the way of the world. A lot of things, there was nothing in place until something happens.
Until something, cataclysmic happens, like you said. Something absolutely unfathomable has to happen in order for everything to be reactive.
Exactly. So these changes after that accident resulted in a drop in filming accidents by over 69%.
No fucking shit.
Between 1982 and 1986.
Yeah. Yes.
Although 6 on-set deaths still occurred during that time frame from 82 to 86, but it dropped it 69%.
Yes. Well,
Lisa.
You know what a lot of it had to do with too, I bet you, not just the fact that those systems existed, but the fact that the people in power that were doing these things earlier are now afraid because they saw John Landis get taken to fucking court.
Exactly.
We talk about that with like airline safety, TSA. Nobody fucking wants to deal with TSA, but God forbid something horrible happened, the amnesia would be gone and everyone would be like, thank God TSA's here.
Exactly.
Nobody wants it until it's in your face.
Exactly.
And it's nuts. That's so crazy.
So that goes hand in hand with your question, because you're like, we haven't had anything else like that, but that's why.
Because there was a reactive scenario.
Yeah,
that's great though.
Yeah,
win.
Yeah, no, we have a win
here.
here. That's what I'll say. I was like, I can't bury the lead. We start with what happened, but there is something that came out of it that's preventative and helpful for the long haul. But
jeez, you just took me on a fucking roller coaster. Wow. Yes, that's awesome. It's interesting to think about in the 80s there being this hotline for like unsafe circumstances,
right?
And I wonder if people utilize that we talk a lot about sexual assault, sexual harassment. I wonder if that line is also available for something like that, or if it's only like logistically unsafe procedures or what. I don't know. I think it's really interesting now that they have that.
Now that you brought that up, that is interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that at some point and try to follow up on that, because I wonder
like
if
the
that was
Whistleblower
handled,
Act and all these things. It's so, I mean, it's unfortunate that, right? I mean, that's just the way of the world. That's how human beings work. It's not until something happens that is a cause and effect for something else. Unfortunately, this had to happen to these families and this scenario in order to protect 69% less injury and death on set.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's like they were sacrificed for the greater good, which is fucking horrible.
It's
but
still fucked up. Yeah. And then, during the years following the accident, Landis was able to continue his career as a filmmaker and producer, like which we talked about. Even it was very surprising to many. He was still able to find work as an actor, producer, director, and writer shortly after the incident, while still being an active figure in the entertainment industry to this day, which is true. Like I told you, he produced a lot of shit. He still directs it. But it's crazy because he's still directing and he's still writing things, but he is not at the level that he once was, because they're never going to allow that, and that justifiably so. Like you kind of have this black cloud floating over you now because of what was done and just how you're handling it. You know what I mean?
Right. I wonder if he was like a part of a lot of things and just kind of put in like the shadows of things,
Yeah.
to not give him too much of honor or fame or whatever. They're like, cool, you make some cool stuff, but we're still gonna like leave you in the back.
Here's a Snapple fact for you. And I knew this, I just never processed what year it was and how it coincided. But a year after the accident, he directed and produced one of the most timeless music videos of all time for some people.
What?
The Thriller. He directed and produced it. And Vincent Price did the narration.
Produced Thriller?
Yeah. With the help of his associate producer from the Twilight Zone, the movie George Falsely Jr. So many of the people who played a part in the incident were still able to find some work in the industry and have mostly moved on from the accident ever since. Again, I just want to bring up John Landis has been around this whole time, but his son, Max Landis, he was one of the main writers. He co-wrote Chronicle with Josh Trank. Max Landis didn't direct Chronicle, though, probably because it makes sense because his name is tied to his father. But, to this day, Max Landis still defends his fucking dad. He's like, my dad did nothing wrong. He never told him to do this. And I'm like, dude,
that's ugly.
You were born like the year of the fucking movie. You weren't there. I understand you're trying to be loyal, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's so Chronicle. I just had to look it up. Chronicle is the movie with
footage,
the flying
superhero stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so this is. Do you remember when this movie?
Yeah, 2013. I have the movie.
Okay. Do you remember me and you fighting about this movie when it came out?
Yes, you had beef with like most of it in the ending. You didn't like Dane DeHaan's evil turn or whatever, but yeah.
I was so fucking mad. I don't remember Michael B. Jordan.
We always have this conversation.
Though.
He was in it. He was like the glue that held them together, and then he got killed. That son of a bitch killed him, or just let him fall from the sky because there was a thunderstorm.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it because it's Michael B. Jordan and like.
But we used to have that talk too, because like during one of the shows we were doing, everyone's like, you and Michael B. Jordan, because you guys act alike and your mannerisms, you dress alike in the movie, and I'm like, yes, I get it. We're similar types. When we were growing up, we were similar types. I get
it. Okay, so I fucking hated that movie.
It was ahead of its time.
So bad. Okay, that's so funny because you said Chronicle, and I was like, yeah, and then I was like, wait. I just picture that kid flying around with the glowing, all weird.
That is my story.
Let me introduce you to a few new friends of ours.
I'm Morgan Rector, host of the Human Monsters True Crime Podcast. Do you find life boring within the comfort zone? This is the right show for you. It will test your endurance. The offenders profiled are among the most inhumane. These people specialize in the unthinkable. Human Monsters, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, don't mind my very juicy, a little bit furry sweatshirt.
Hey.
It's my new favorite thing. Okay, here we go. I said earlier before we started recording that I put on makeup today because
No.
I've been sick for like 2 weeks and I feel like shit. And I said, I feel like I look like a drag queen with all the makeup I have on. And now I really look like a drag queen with my
I was like, that's looking very
perfectly furry
velour or something. What's up with
sweater.
that?
Oh boy. Okay. So, the Altamont Speedway Festival is something I had never heard of before. And I was listening to a podcast called Small Town Murder. Have you ever heard of it? It's two comedians. They're pretty raunchy. They're like a bunch of dudes, but I enjoy them. And their whole concept is they do murders or whatever crimes that take place in these small towns. And this wasn't a story that they did, but they mentioned a different rock festival, and it kind of like led me down a road, and this is the rabbit hole I ended up in the end of. So in 1969, the Rolling Stones were on tour, and their ticket prices were really, really high, and it kind of pissed a lot of people off. So they had to kind of answer this criticism of having unattainable tickets, and they decided to do it by ending their world tour with a free concert in San Francisco. They held a one-day rock festival at the Altamont Speedway in Livermore, California on December 6, 1969. So this was a free festival that was intended as a thank you gesture by the band to their fans, and it featured Santana, the Jefferson Airplane, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the fucking Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead. Okay. So like that is a bunch of heavy hitters, you know, for free. Yeah. And now it's 1969. I mean, when you think of 1969 and music, you think Woodstock, right? That is the pivotal 1960s vibe. It's peace, love, and sex, and drugs, and rock and roll, and you know, you picture this roll. Have you ever been to Bethel Woods in upstate New York? That's where Woodstock took place. Okay. My dad lives right over there. Yeah, like my uncle's old property is actually used to be like campground or something of Woodstock. So yeah. So, I mean, the imagery you get is like daisies and rolling green hills, and, you know, you could picture it. So this Altamont Speedway Festival took place just 4 months after Woodstock. And a lot has been written about this festival as the anti-Woodstock. It was like, quote unquote, the day the 60s died. And yeah. But given the way most festivals were organized at the time, violence at a festival was perhaps inevitable. So approximately 300,000 people attended this concert. And people anticipated it be the Woodstock of the West.
That already just sounds
right. It's San Francisco.
Fucking weird. This whole anti-Woodstock and Woodstock of the West. I just picture everybody like in suits. It's like Silicon Valley folk going to see this concert.
Well, so it ended up being the anti-Woodstock, but that wasn't what they were trying to make it. They were trying to recreate something that's unrecreatable. They wanted to bring Woodstock and that feeling and that vibe to California. And so Woodstock was held in Bethel, New York in mid-August, which is just 4 months before this festival took place. However, the Altamont Festival is remembered for considerable violence in comparison to Woodstock. There were a ton of people that were injured during Altamont. Damn. Numerous cars were stolen and then abandoned. There was extensive property damage, and unfortunately, multiple people died during this festival. There was a hit and run accident where 2 people were killed by a car. And there was a death of I don't really get into these two here, these two stories, but I'm just going to give you like an overview of a man who had an LSD trip and he ended up drowning in an irrigation culvert. Dude, fucked up. So there was also a murder at this concert. So, like I said earlier, this concert
It
had
should
the
have been a
heavy
very
hitters.
mellow audience. Instead, everybody's on some purge shit right now. I don't.
So when you have like Jefferson Airplane eventually became Jefferson Starship, and I've seen them live. They're great. I mean, these are just Santana, Jefferson Airplane, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and the Rolling Stones were set to take the stage as the final act. And the Grateful Dead were also scheduled to play in between Crosby, Still, Nash and Young, and the Rolling Stones, but they refused to go on stage in the middle of the show because the amount of violence that they were seeing in the audience made the Grateful Dead go, nope.
They're like, we're too old for this
Bye.
shit. I'm not.
Yo, I mean, just imagine how bad it actually is that the Grateful Dead wouldn't play. So, according to Spencer Dryden, who is a member of Jefferson Airplane, the idea of a kind of Woodstock West began when he and a bandmate discussed staging a free concert with the Grateful Dead and the Rolling Stones in Golden Gate Park. And he said, next to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones were the biggest rock and roll band in the world. And he wanted them to experience what they were experiencing in San Francisco. So as plans were being finalized, Jefferson Airplane was on the road, and we're under the impression plans for the concert at Golden Gate Park were moving along. But by December 4th, the plans had completely broken down because the city and the police departments were being unhelpful, and innate conflict between the hippies and the police were manifesting in obstructiveness. So they were just like, nah, we're not helping you. We can't all seem to get along here. Take it somewhere else. So the next place they looked was Sears Point Raceway, but its owners wanted $100,000 in escrow from the Rolling Stones.
Fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, good luck.
1969. Like, no.
It's a lot of fucking money. So at the last moment, a man named Dick Carter saved the day. He offered his Altamont Speedway in eastern Alameda County for the festival, and the location was pretty much taken in the spirit of desperation. They had no fucking other choice. So in making the preparations, the Grateful Dead manager, his name was Rock Scully, and a concert organizer named Michael Lang helicoptered over the site before making the decision. And Lang had done the same thing when Woodstock was being moved. It was originally supposed to be in a place called Wallkill, New York, and it got moved to Bethel. So the hasty move resulted in numerous logistical issues. There was no bathroom facilities, no medical tents. It also created a problem with the stage design. So when you think of going to a concert...
Oh, no. It's one of those questions.
When you think of going to a concert, the stage is normally set far in front of the audience, right? So there's like barriers, and it's set higher, usually higher than a person's head. Like usually you're like you might be chin level. Right. It's way above my head, right? So the stage, instead of being at like the top of a hill like it would have been at Golden Gate Park, at Altamont, the stage was going to be at the bottom of a slope. And that's a logistical nightmare, right? Because the crowd is just fighting
just
gravity.
The car or the stage itself just sliding down that motherfucker like snowball effect.
So you have the crowd who's going to be like, if the stage is at the bottom of the hill, the crowd has to be sitting against gravity of making their way to the front of the stage, right? Which you're not going to.
No one ever wins against gravity.
Nope, sure don't. And the second problem to that is that the fucking stage was only 39 inches high. That's not even 4 feet tall.
So that means half those people can't even see by default with just the angle, right? Of gravity, the way they're shimmying up. I'd already be mad. I'd be like, I paid. Well, no one paid money. It was free. But I would have been like, I'm here in the hot ass sun and I can't see the show.
Well, what you're going to find is like, people are going to be like pushing to the front, which is the opposite of what you want. You want them to be, that's why you want to be on the top of the hill, not the bottom of the hill. So what do you think would be a reasonable fix to this
Reverse
issue?
it. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so if that's not an option, what else would you do? You're stuck with this stage.
Build a higher stage.
And this design.
Build
No,
a
I'm really
higher
asking.
stage.
Okay.
On top of the existing stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Is this another Frozen moment where we're doing the scenarios and we're choosing our fate?
Well, I'll tell you what I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have done what they did. And what they thought was the answer to this problem was, rather than find a reasonable way to fix the issue, they just decided to hire the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club out of Oakland to surround the stage and provide security.
Yes. Out of all of the professional bouncers we could have got, let's get the Hells Angels.
The fucking Hells Angels. Yep. So the Oakland chapter, led by Ralph Sonny Barger, was hired as security by the management of the Rolling Stones on the recommendation of the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane, who had both previously used the Angels for security at performances without incident.
Hot take right here. All of this shit to me sounds like the owner of Altamont is intentionally setting all of this up so it can fail and he can reap some insurance money or some shit. Because why are we doing such basic ass things backwards? You need...
So, I mean, I'm going to get a little further into it, but the owner of the Altamont Speedway ended up hiring his own security teams to help protect his assets, but not the concert goers. The concert goers were only corralled by the fucking Hells Angels. And here's the killer. They were paid in $500 worth of beer. So, like, you're gonna get what you paid for.
Yeah, let's get fucking Hell's Angels.
What you paid for is a bunch of
and everything else to fucking... Yeah, this is so...
Right.
Again, is this like a game? Is this like a limit test to see... no, what is it? Litmus
Recipe
test?
for disaster.
To see how far you can stress something out before the scenario fucking breaks. Because, yeah.
Well, it doesn't take very long. So, right. So you have a bunch of, like, inherently pissed off angry people because they're Hells Angels or whatever, they have a reputation, and then you pay them in beer and they're all hammered, and then you give them some sense of authority and you tell them protect these things. So it's just all fucking soup bowl of shit. So either way, the story has been denied by some parties who were directly involved because it was a terrible idea. Obviously, in hindsight, it's fucking 2020. So according to the road manager for the Rolling Stones, his name is Sam Cutler, he said the only agreement there ever was is that the Angels would make sure nobody tampered with the generators. But that was the extent of it. There was in no way going to be an agreement that they were to be the police force or anything like that. Filmmakers Albert and David oh boy, I'm really bad at last names. I'm so sorry, world. Maysles. Maysles. Shot footage of the event and incorporated it into a 1970s documentary film called Gimme Shelter. And it was actually, I haven't seen it, but it's, from my understanding, it's from the point of view of the Rolling Stones through.
I haven't seen it either, but
experience.
And it's got I've heard of it. I mean, I've seen
You've heard of it?
Trailers or clips of it, but I haven't actually watched it. But you're correct in what the synopsis is.
And it's got a 93% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was released at the Cannes Film Festival. So, it kind of, to me, it gives it a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Oomph. I don't know. It's honor. I can, you know what I'm saying? So in the documentary, Gimme Shelter, Sonny Barger, the Hells Angel guy, states that the Hells Angels were not interested in policing the event and that the organizers had told them the Angels would be required to do little more than sit at the edge of the stage, drink beer, and make sure there were not any murders or rapes occurring around them. Which sounds pretty reasonable, I think. Like, that's probably the truth. I don't think that they wanted them to walk around and be like, hey,
they just wanted them to be there. Yeah, protect your asses. And because you're Hells Angels, they felt people would just see that and back off naturally. But...
So I think that that's definitely true. People would see the badges on their jackets or whatever and be like, well, they're kind of scary. We're not going to do anything fucking stupid with them. So there was a radio show that held a call-in, quote unquote, they opened a line essentially for people to call in and talk shit about the show the day after. And a woman had called into the program, and she said that she had seen at least 5 fist fights from her vantage point near the stage, and that the angels were involved in every single one of them. I mean,
ridiculous. Color me
God,
shocked.
We're inviting a violent motorcycle gang, an outlaw motorcycle gang. She also described a general uncaring attitude towards people who clearly needed help. That a girl who was dragged across the stage by her hair, another who was on a bad acid trip, and bystanders kicked and walked on her. And she said she felt like having the angels as security, quote unquote, was an irresponsible move because they were all in terror of them. Correct. I think that was kind of the point.
It got out of hand, though.
Right, for sure, yeah. So when she tried to speak about this at the concert, she was warned to be quiet by the people around her for fear of her getting beaten up by the Hells Angels. Not great. So the Altamont Speedway owner, Dick Carter, had hired hundreds of professionals in plain clothes. They were security guards, ostensibly more with the purpose of protecting his property rather than the safety and well-being of the concert goers. But in the film, Sonny Barger mentions that you can identify these guards because they were wearing little white buttons. And that's how you knew that they were here for Dick Carter. I think I've painted a pretty good picture. It's kind of like debaucherous, you know, like there's
no, definitely not. It was just tension, fucking fear, and then just aggression. Yeah, it was just all of that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy because maybe one day I'll do it. There's a documentary about Woodstock 99.
I haven't seen it.
Have you seen the documentary series on Netflix? Okay. And there was a Woodstock 94, and there's been all these like moments where they keep trying to recreate something that was once in a lifetime.
You're never going to capture lightning on a bottle again with that.
And you're never going to create. Right. Well, yeah, it was a different time. It was a protest against Vietnam, and it was just a completely, now everyone's angry all the time about everything. So but there's still this driving force to kind of recreate this festival, and it fails every time. And music festivals, I don't know if you've ever been to a music festival, like a rock music festival, but they're inherently disgusting. Like I've been to Warped Tour. I got food poisoning. Like it's disgusting. It's hot. It's not easy to be a part of any of it. So take all of that into consideration when you kind of paint the picture of what you're looking at here. So the first act on stage was Santana, and he gave a performance that generally went pretty smoothly. However, over the course of this day, the mood of both the crowd and the angels became progressively agitated and violent. The angels had been drinking all day, and most were very drunk, along with the crowd. And the crowd had become kind of antagonistic and unpredictable, attacking each other, attacking the angels, attacking the performers. Denise Jukes, who's a lead singer of a local San Francisco band called the Ace of Cups, who was 6 months pregnant, was hit in the head by an empty beer bottle thrown from the crowd, and she suffered a skull fracture.
Whoa.
The Rolling Stones later paid for her ambulance and medical services.
Time out. First off, she was 6 months pregnant performing. They threw a heavy ass can. Was it filled? It was empty. It was an
empty beer bottle.
It's glass.
Yes. Glass,
sorry, it's heavy.
And
Jesus Christ! And it fractured her skull. Yeah. That person. Wow.
I mean, come on.
That's what I'm saying.
Skull fracture is.
Luckily, she didn't lose the baby or anything.
It's a lot of force. Oh my God! Jesus, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. So, I think it's interesting that the Rolling Stones paid for all of her medical services because there's some kind of responsibility taken there, which they don't take responsibility for much else this story. You'll find out. But the Hells Angels proceeded to arm themselves with sawed-off pool cues and motorcycle chains to drive the crowd back further from the stage.
I thought you were gonna say sawed-off shotguns. That completely took me for a loop. She's like sawed-off pool cues. So they're just stakes. Pool they're vampire stakes now. They're shanking people.
People. Yeah. apparently the crowd had toppled either by accident or on purpose one of the Angels' motorcycles. And the Angels became even more aggressive after that, if you can see that coming. And their aggression even went onto the performers. So Marty Ballin of Jefferson Airplane jumped off the stage to try to sort out a problem that an Angel was having with the crowd, only to be punched in the head and knocked out unconscious during the band's set. So while Jefferson Airplane guitarist Paul Katner, Paul. He's gonna go with Paul. He sarcastically thanks the Angels for knocking out his singer during the set, and the Angel took a hold of his microphone and started to argue with him.
You got a problem with how I do my work here, my job of security?
Oh my God. It's right. It's all falling apart fast.
Oh my goodness.
So during Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's set, Stephen Stills was reported to be repeatedly stabbed in the leg by a stoned out Hell's Angel with a sharpened bicycle spoke.
I'm sorry.
It's fucked up.
A bicycle spoke for people who aren't familiar with bicycles. I mean, we're all familiar, but I need to hear it. What part is that? Yes.
The imagery, right? The spoke is the little piece that comes out of the side of the wheel. There's many spokes in a tire, and you take the one spoke out and you stab Stephen Stills with it.
How sharp are those things? They sharpen it to stab people.
Fuck, man.
So you're just over here performing, you're guitaring and shit like that, and you're singing, and then just someone stabbing you repeatedly in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
That is crazy. Okay, all right. Well,
yep.
This is crazy.
Yep. So by the time the Rolling Stones took the stage in the early evening, the mood had decidedly turned ugly, and numerous fights had erupted between the Angels and the crowd members and the crowd within themselves. The Rolling Stones actually waited until sundown to perform, which seems like a fucking bad choice if you ask me. Like, why are we going to let them all just stew and waiting for the sun to go down to perform? But Stanley Booth stated that part of the reason for the delay was that Bill Wyman had missed his helicopter ride to the venue. So they had to wait. So when the Stones began their set, a tightly packed group between 4,000 and 5,000 people jammed to the very front of the stage. And many people were like attempting to climb on the stage to be a part of this show, which, like, okay, Justin, how many rock concerts have you been to?
A couple.
0?
A couple in my day.
Okay. So, okay. But like, have you experienced like this?
Oh, hell no.
That
no.
Unreasonable. No, like people, this is what happens when you go to shows. When you go to like, I mean, I have friends in like hardcore bands or whatever, and it's cool to be in like the vantage point of like not being crushed by a mosh pit. I'm being backstage, but like they get all up in the front and they're all pushing each other and they're climbing and they're stage diving. I mean, it's just part of the culture.
I will agree with that. I feel like the most I've ever dealt with that was a Eminem Jay-Z concert in Detroit. I was literally in the front row.
I'm sure that was ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it was so crazy. I was there in the front row. We specifically went to Detroit because that featured more of Eminem's set list. But yeah, you know, front row is just fucking standing there, and we're literally like 1.5 feet separated from the stage. And what happens is as soon as
I bet you that stage was up here though.
Oh yeah. Well, even to me, it was like 4 to 5 feet above me. Yeah. But the thing is, like, shit starts going, and all of a sudden people just want to bum rush to cut in front so they can be in front and try to touch Eminem or Jay-Z or Dr. Dre, who's ever coming up there. Everybody's just pushing to go through.
It's like my worst nightmare. I'm claustrophobic just hearing you talk about it.
Shit, yeah.
That's why I stand in the back. So so people were trying to climb up on stage, which to me seems like a normal sort of scenario. So Mick Jagger had already been punched in the head by a concert goer from the second he emerged from the helicopter, which is fucking hilarious.
My goodness.
I mean, you walked out and it was like instantly you knew that this was like an unruly situation. And he kind of like just was yelling out to the crowd, like, just be cool in the front, like, don't push. But by the third song, Sympathy for the Devil, a fight erupted in the front of the crowd at the foot of the stage. And this prompted the Stones to pause, and they waited for the Angels to kind of restore order, which seems like a ridiculous sentence.
Completely.
And after a lengthy after a lengthy pause and another appeal for calm, the band restarted the song and continued their set with less incidents until the start of Under My Thumb. And at this point, some of the Hells Angels had gotten into a scuffle with a young man named Meredith Hunter. And he is an 18-year-old young guy.
Okay.
And he was attempting to get on stage with other fans. You know, this is the same concept is still happening. But one of the Hells Angels grabbed Hunter's head, punched him, and chased him back into the crowd. And after a minute of pause, Hunter returned to the stage, where, according to the Gimme Shelter producer Porter Bibb, Hunter's girlfriend found him and was tearfully like begging him to calm down and like back up further into the crowd with her. But he was enraged, irrational, and so high he could barely walk, said the producer. Rock Scully, who could see the audience clearly because he was standing on top of a truck by the stage,
right,
said of Hunter, quote, "I saw what he was looking at, that he was crazy. He was on drugs and that he had murderous intent. There was no doubt in my mind that he intended to do terrible harm to Mick or somebody in the Rolling Stones or somebody on that stage." Okay. This isn't in any of the articles I've read, but this is something I feel like needs to be noted here. So Meredith Hunter was a young black man in the 1960s.
Right.
And once you hear the outcome of the story, that narrative seems very self-serving, that he looked so dangerous or he seemed like they could understand his malintent. And it's very hard for me not to say that there's a real possibility that racism played a very strong part
definitely.
in this story.
I agree with that.
So I was just listening to coverage actually of someone about the 1999 Woodstock, and the opening act was like James Brown or something ridiculous that makes no sense, and he refused to go on stage because he had always said that he needed to be paid in full before he went on stage, because there's inherently this thing in rock and roll culture for racism in black people, so they would not get paid, or they would only get paid partially, and this is all still part of that culture. I mean, it's late 60s. It's
absolutely.
I can't believe that it wasn't talked about in any of these stories. It's infuriating. So here I am shining a light on something that no one else is fucking talking about in this story. But here we go. So the following initial scuffle with the Angel is because he tried to climb on the stage.
Okay.
And when you watch the footage, there's actual footage from this exact moment in the documentary. It's available. It exists.
I'm going to have to take a look at that later today.
So Hunter is wearing a lime green suit. And you see him return to the front of the crowd. And he drew a long-barreled .22 caliber revolver from inside his jacket. And a Hells Angel named Alan Passaro, seeing Hunter draw the revolver, drew a knife from his belt and charged him from the side, stabbing him twice with his right hand and killing him.
Damn.
So the footage was shot by Eric Saarinen. He was on stage taking pictures of the crowd. And Brian Bayard, who climbed atop a bus. So Sarin was unaware that he had even caught the killing on tape. It wasn't discovered until more than a week after the show had ended, when they were doing a screening in their New York offices, that they saw this film sequence. And it's only like 2 seconds long. But you see a 6-foot opening in the crowd, leaving Hunter's girlfriend standing in the center of it. And then Hunter enters the opening from the left. His hand raises towards the stage, and the silhouette of a revolver is clearly seen in contrast to the light-colored vest that his girlfriend was wearing. And then you see Passaro enter from the right, delivering 2 stabs with his knife as he parried Hunter's revolver and pushed him off the screen.
Shit.
And then that opening closed around the girlfriend. Again, what they don't talk about, All they say is black man, gun, violence, irrational high, right? All these things.
Mhm.
No one's talking about what is happening with the girlfriend. Are they threatening the girlfriend? What is her part in all of this? Like, is he protecting her?
Exactly.
That was my first thought.
He probably was
this
protecting
circle
her.
Opens up around her, and I can't see him just being so mad that he got punched in the head at a rock concert. It had to have been about his. This is complete pure speculation,
right?
Folks. Like this is me and my interpretation of what I read, but they don't talk about it. They don't talk about things that were said to each other. They don't talk about what that Hell's Angel might have said to him, or he might have said to that Hell's Angel.
Exactly.
You know, it's just like there's so much more to this story
that we'll never know.
And
unfortunately,
no. So Pissarro was reported to have stabbed Meredith Hunter 5 times in the upper back, although you only saw 2 stabbings in the footage. And witnesses also reported Hunter was stomped on by several Hell's Angels while he was on the ground. So he didn't have a fucking fighting chance, you know? The gun was recovered and turned over to the police. No talk of shots being fired, nothing. His autopsy did confirm that he was high on methamphetamine when he died, which I'm sure everyone fucking was.
At this concert,
it's 1969. Yeah. Alan Pissarro was arrested and tried for murder in the summer of 1971. But he was acquitted by a jury after they viewed the footage of Hunter brandishing a revolver and concluded that Pissarro had acted in self-defense. What do you make of that, Justin?
Again,
I'm mad. I don't understand how that's self-defense. He's not defending himself. This guy came out of the left. Fucking Pissarro came out of the right. Who is he defending? That's not self-defense.
Exactly. But again, they kind of just took a quick glimpse of that video. They're just like, this whole place is rioting. Who knows? The man had a gun.
We see a gun.
We see a
threatening
looking man. Air quotes. Yeah.
Dude,
bullshit.
I got
but
so mad.
Is what I mean.
So
it's bullshit.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting enough, in 2003, okay, so this is 30 fucking years later, Alameda County Sheriff's Office initiated a 2-year investigation into the possibility that a second Hell's Angel had taken part in the stabbing.
Oh, interesting,
right?
Yeah.
So they found nothing. So this is a dead end. I have nothing to give you on this. They said they found insufficient support of the hypothesis and reaffirmed that Pissarro had acted alone, and they closed the case for good in 2005.
Okay.
But what happened 34 years after the fact that made them go, wait, maybe someone else was involved in this? I'm dying to know. I have no idea. I don't have the
answer. Maybe they got a hold of some other footage that we just didn't get to see.
Oh, is it possible you can redeem the fucking character of the man that was murdered in all of this instead of making him out to be the bad guy who needed to be defended against?
They must have got some additional footage, but it was already too late because before they ruled self-defense, so they can't go back on that aspect. But now, if there's footage of another Hell's Angel person, we could get you on that. Yeah.
Well, if there's another person involved in the killing of this individual, it's no longer self-defense.
Exactly.
Right? It's, oh man. So yeah, I mean, number one, there are like a bazillion cases that need this much attention, this level of attention.
Agreed.
That have not already been acquitted with an apparent killer and on film, right? So like, hey, Alameda County, I'm sure there's other things you could put your resources into. But I'm dying to know what prompted that fucking second investigation. And I don't have the answers. So the Altamont Speedway Festival is often contrasted with Woodstock Festival. While Woodstock represented peace and love, Altamont came to be viewed as the end of the hippie era and the de facto conclusion to the late 1960s American youth culture. Altamont became, whether fairly or not, a symbol for the death of the Woodstock Nation. The music magazine Rolling Stone in a 14-page, 11-author article on the event entitled "The Rolling Stones Disaster at Altamont, Let It Bleed," published in their 1970 issue in January of 1970, that the Altamont was the product of diabolical egotism, hype, ineptitude, money manipulation, and at base a fundamental lack of concern for humanity. The article covered the many issues at the event's organization and was very critical of the organizers and the Rolling Stones. So the film Gimme Shelter has been criticized by viewers for portraying the Rolling Stones too sympathetically and for staging a concert for the sole reason that it could be filmed despite all the problems that led up to it. So Keith Richards is relatively optimistic about the show. He calls it basically well handled.
Bullshit.
Lots of people were tired, and a few tempers were frayed.
No, they knew what they were doing.
It was a good concert. You listen, this is a money grab.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like, how can I find another way to make this about me? So there is a conspiracy theory that I find very interesting, and I'm going to just throw in here. There's a story that came out in 2008 from a former FBI agent stating that members of the Hells Angels had conspired to murder Mick Jagger in retribution for the Rolling Stones' lack of support following the concert and for the negative portrayal of the Angels in the Gimme Shelter film. So the conspirators reportedly used a boat to approach a residence where Jagger was staying on Long Island, and the plot failed when the boat nearly sunk by a storm. I think that is fairly plausible. That is a fairly
I'm gonna have to look
story.
into that now,
right? There's been lots of music festivals, and like we said, none of them live up to Woodstock. None of them are this catastrophic. I feel like this is one that isn't like talked about enough.
Because that's the thing I've never heard about.
Woodstock and being such an epic failure. Yeah. But yeah, that is the story of the Altamont Speedway Festival, the worst rock concert in history.
Yeah, the end of dare I say the end of the hippie era and the end of just
it killed the era. That was it. It went out horribly. Wow. You know, everything that the counterculture of the 60s was about turned on its head at Altamont. You know?
That's fucking crazy. So, well, in the next couple of years, maybe we'll see even more footage of other particular incidents happening there, and they're getting to the bottom of this even more.
It's nice to think that, but I think that at the end of the day, like you always say, everyone sweeps it under the rug. Like it's already over, so they're just not gonna rip open the Band-Aid if they don't have to. Right. Something must have prompted that they couldn't ignore it. But once they were able to shut it again, they were like, lock it up. Cold case. Get rid of it. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, that was a hell of a story, Lisa. I was not expecting half of that. And it just, again,
I didn't know any of it.
My hot take, I'm like, this seems like it was intentionally set for disaster because it's just too much. It's just too much.
Yep.
Venue, Hell's Angel security guards, alcohol involved for these motherfuckers, all these other things.
Think about the amount of people, right? So you're talking about 300,000.
That's what I'm saying.
And all you brought in was the fucking Hell's Angels?
No.
I mean, there's probably a 1 to 100 people at most.
If that,
right?
That's
not enough. That's not enough.
So
yeah, there was another one. Maybe I shouldn't even talk about it, and I should. All right, I'm just gonna leave it. It's another music festival that I had never heard of before that is also a little nuts. It's not this, but I'll tell you about it someday. It's the Soda Pop Festival.
Okay. Actually, I think I might have heard of that one, but I don't know all the details. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you look back at the history of the creative arts, it takes a lot of darkness to create the light the arts bring to the world.
Thanks for joining us this week. And if you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and go over to Apple Podcasts to rate and review.
Please check out our sources listed in the episode notes. They're amazing.
And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and all of the social platforms at Crime of the Arts Podcast.
We're looking forward to having you back next week. Until next time, peace out, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.